Hello and welcome. In this tutorial, we are going to look at how to create our source code repository and how to exchange the files between our system and the repository. In the last tutorial, we looked at how to generate a public key crypto system. We generated SSH keys on our system and we put our public key on our GitHub repository or on our GitHub account. Now we are going to see how to use that. It is important because we cannot push information from our system to the repository if we do not have that public private key pair generated and matched. So I'll head over to my GitHub account and I'm going to create a new repository. So I'm going to go to this, click on repositories and create new. I want to create a repository named, let's say, class 1, and I'm going to make it a public repository. Now if you have a paid account, you can actually have private repositories, but you can leave them public as long as you are not having proprietary source codes. You select add a readme file here. We also have the .gitignore. We're going to look at how this is important later on, but files that we don't want to be staged or pushed from our system or pulled to our system will go into the gitignore folder, and so the system is going to ignore those files while the files or the directories are transferred. If this is like an open source project, we can add the kind of license. If not, you just select add a readme file and create repository. Now we've created a repository called class 1. You go over to code here. Make sure you select the SSH tab. You can also do this with HTTPS, but we want to use SSH for this tutorial. You click here to copy and head over to your command line interface. Now I'm going to be using Commander for this. Commander is another console emulator for Windows. In the last tutorial we used the Git bash emulator. We can also use Commander. You can go over to commander.app and download this to use, but it's exactly the same thing. So I'm trying to illustrate this in case we have students who want to try different console emulator. And in another tutorial I'm going to use terminal for MacBook so that we can see that they are all basically the same, just with a little bit of changes in command. When I get here, I'm going to go to the directory where I want to clone that file that I have created on GitHub. I want to do this on my desktop, so this is okay, but in the event I want to do this in another directory, I will change my directory to the directory I want. So I want it created on my desktop, and so I'll type git clone and then I will paste what I copied, and then it should clone that repository. So if your SSH key is has a passphrase, this is the time you type it in, and if it's not correct, it's going to block me. If it's correct, it's going to download it. And now when I come back to my desktop, I'm going to find that. So I can go to the directory called class 1 on my desktop now, and I have it there. If I list, I'm going to see that the only thing I have there is my readme file. So I'll go about this again. When you go to GitHub, you create a new repository. The repository is just like a project or a folder with a project where you're going to store all your files. You are going to add a readme file to it, and then you are going to come over to code, and then you want to clone this repository with SSH. You come to your computer, your command line, and then you go to the directory where you want to put this file, and then you type git clone and then paste what you copied and then enter, and this is going to copy that file from GitHub here. We can now head over to our text editor. I'll be using Atom, so I'm going to open that, and I have my Atom opened. I want to add that project, so I'm going to go to file. I will add project folder, and what I want to add is on my desktop, and I want to add class 1 folder. Now I have that folder here. I'm open the readme file. Now this is written in Markdown. Markdown is a different way of writing stuff. It's not a language, but that is what GitHub uses. And since this is not a tutorial on how to use GitHub, we're just going to skip how to use Markdown, but just follow exactly what I do. In another different course where we handle this, you can learn how to use all of this. Now for the readme file, just type this is the trial repo. Save this. Once I put this and save and head over to my command line, if I type git status like this, it will show me that I have modified the readme file. It is not yet staged. How do we stage this file? I will type git add and then the name of the file. You can use the all flag like this and it adds that. If I type git status again, we have it already staged, ready to be committed. The next thing to do is to type git commit, and then I want a commit message. I'll use the M flag and I'll write first commit or any message you want. Once this is done, now if you haven't generated SSH keys between your system and GitHub, this is where you begin to get your error message when you try to push to the repository. Now because there's a connection, when I put git push origin and the name of my branch is main, origin main, and this automatically transfers the file to GitHub, and the file has been successfully transferred, and this is the commit number. If I come to GitHub here and I refresh, it will just show me that a new file was transferred and it's the readme that was modified, and this is what I typed there. This is a trial repo. It was done 44 seconds ago or 1 minute ago, and this is the commit number. So this is how we transfer files, and this is one way, creating a repository on GitHub and sending to your system. But there's another way which is not as straightforward, where you have a file on your system that you want to make a repository and you want to send it to GitHub without having the file on GitHub. You just create the name and send your files. And so let's try to do that so you can understand. Let's say I create a new directory and I'm going to name this directory class 2, or let's say trial 2. So I'm going to go to my trial 2 directory, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add, so I'll remove this project folder and I'm going to add the project folder from my desktop called trial 2. In this trial 2, I want to create a new file and I'm going to put the name index.html. Let's say I'll put the basic HTML template here. So I have created this, and the name of this is index.html in a trial 2 folder. I want to make this a Git repository. I'm going to use git init to initialize this as a repository. It is initialized to a branch called master. I want it to be a main branch, so I write git branch main. So I want to rename it main, or I want to put it to a branch name main, and so I have a new branch called main. I'll head over to GitHub and I'll create a repository called, and the name must be uniform, let's say trial 2. So uniform name makes it easier, so I'll make it trial 2. It's going to be public, but this time I am not going to initialize with a readme. I will just go ahead to create the repository. Now I have an empty repository here and I want to push what I have here in trial 2 to that empty repository. I'll first add git add all. I'll commit, first commit. So you can put any commit message you want, and then now I am going to send this to GitHub. So I'll put git remote add origin trial 2, and it already exists, and now I can push git push origin main. I'll type my passphrase and then it is there. When I come here now and I refresh, I have my file transferred immediately. So this is how we use Git and GitHub, and we've established a connection. Now the next connection in an advanced course is between GitHub and your production environment, maybe a cloud server and others, but it's basically the same. You're going to generate SSH keys on your server and also add it the same way to GitHub, and then you are able to pull from GitHub, or you can make an automatic pipeline where it's tested and deployed automatically once there is a push to your production environment. So this is where we end this lesson. In the next lesson, we are going to look at how to start creating projects from customer requirements. Thank you and see you in the next lesson.